You're listening to CinePunked. This episode,
Put on a happy face.
I'm your host, Robert J. E. Simpson.
Todd Phillips' 2019 film Joker was something of a phenomenon. A movie based on the long-running Batman franchise, but without any of the superhero trappings that are usual within the Marvel and DC franchises. Joaquin Phoenix's titular performance earned him widespread adulation, but the film was not without its detractors. The depiction of mental illness within the film coming in for criticism. Is the Joker too un-PC for the 21st century, or does he throw a lens on the harsh realities of a global mental health problem? That's a fairly big question for our first podcast record of lockdown, but here we are, and from our computers across the land, I am joined by my erstwhile colleagues, Dr. Rachael Kelly.
Hello.
And Ben Simpson.
Hello.
I don't know how we've managed to get like 2.5 months into lockdown before we've actually managed to do this as a virtual record.
Oh, well, we're all really busy in lockdown, and yeah.
Well, it's not that we haven't been. I mean, we've actually been working away on content, but it's just this is the first chance we've had to sit down. And
we had to wait for your stuff and your internet.
That's true. That's true. It's all about the tech, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all about the tech. Once the tech was there, then it was easy.
I just do what I'm told.
You do what you're told. Oh dear. So this is just a little bit different for us folks, not being in the same room but having the conversations. But thankfully, thanks to the wonders of technology, we can all see each other. Thanks to Zoom, which seems to just have the dominance at the moment. But yeah, we're going to carry on for today. So Joker is where we're going to start with this one, which was
Joker. That was fun. That was a fun film.
Did you not enjoy it?
Enjoy would be the wrong word, I think. I thought Joaquin Phoenix's performance was mesmerizing. I will generally watch most things even tangentially connected to Batman. I think the character of the Joker is fascinating.
Yeah.
And there I run out of nice things to say about it.
Oh, Ben, what do you think?
Well, I thought it was incredible. I loved the character, like some of the scenes in that film, like when you see his body, like with his shirt off and all, and the bruises, and how skinny and everything he is, and like I think, like for him to get into that shape for that movie, it's quite like, it's like how on earth do you do that healthily? That's crazy. But like it was very dark. I like dark stuff. So like this was right up my street. I went places where I wasn't really expecting. I kind of thought I was going to go there, but then there's this whole thing. It's like, is it real?
We'll get to that, I think.
Yeah.
I like dark to a certain extent, and I think dark it's appropriate. I mean, that's where the Batman franchise, rightly or wrongly, finds itself, and rightly, as far as I'm concerned, that's part of the appeal for me.
Yeah.
But this, for me, was not so much dark, it's just bleak. I mean, it was bleak. And what I find difficult to understand is how you make a film about the Joker and make it so completely devoid of joy. Now, the Joker as a character you've got to be able to enjoy the character to a certain extent. I mean, it doesn't really take much unpicking to go, actually, it's probably not okay to enjoy this character because he's just really doing some horrible things and enjoying the horrible things that he's doing. But there has to be that element of, oh, Joker, you rapscallion, even when he is being horrifying, even when he's being terrifying. And some of the iterations of Joker have gone to that really deep, dark level. But you sense that the Joker's having fun, and while that's not necessarily, in fact, it's in no way a good thing. I mean, he's having fun by doing awful things to people.
Yeah.
but that kind of lifts the tone of it enough to be able to enjoy it. I mean, there's nothing to enjoy with this Joker. He's just tragic. His life is horrendous. Gotham City as well. It's barely even Gotham. I mean, Gotham is redeemable. That's the essence of Gotham. That's why Batman fights so hard for it. It's redeemable. It's just absolutely shit. And yeah, this is absolutely shit. But where is the capacity for redemption in this Gotham City? It's just. I do. I mean, I think this might very well be the way superhero films end up going, because we were constantly hearing about how, the superhero film is a bubble, where, it's a cycle, but we're getting to the end of it. There's only so much you can do with them. We've been hearing this for what, 10, 15 years now?
This isn't a superhero film in any way, shape, or form.
No, it's not, and that's what I find actually interesting.
Well, for me, this is what I really liked about it, because you guys are well aware that I have limited patience and tolerance for the superhero movies, because they I don't know, I just find them so samey, so repetitive, and just too. They've got to a point now where they're too far removed. I cannot suspend my disbelief long enough.
You don't have to like the superhero films. It's perfectly all right not to enjoy a genre of films, but then don't destroy that genre of films to make it more like the films that you like.
But I don't think this is a case of having destroyed that genre of films. This is something else. I mean, this is part of this was meant to be the start of the DC Black Line, which was meant to be these sort of standalone films that were outside the traditional MCU DC type sort of shared universe stuff. And yes, folks, I do know that DC and Marvel are two different companies with no overlapping franchises.
I should hope so. We've been friends for a while here, Robert. Okay, if you don't, then I'm remiss in some way.
But like this is meant to be something slightly different, and it sort of seems to have given them a chance to get to make films that are just great as films.
But you see, the thing is, when you actually start reading about what Todd Phillips was hoping to accomplish with this, is he was, to a certain extent, trying to subvert the superhero industry. He says, we're going to make a real film, and we're going to get it under the radar just by pretending it's a superhero film. Now, that's not what superhero films are for. You know me. I am a massive fan of escapist Hollywood cinema. It's why I am interested in it, and that broad appeal that it has, the ability to reflect back the joy and the escapism is part of what interests me about it. And I see no harm in enjoying silliness in film at all for the sake of silliness in film. So I don't see any need to reinvent the superhero film in a way that makes it depressing. Batman is always going to have that darkness about him, always. That's the enjoyment with Batman. That's why I find that character so endlessly fascinating. But there's a difference between darkness and bleakness.
Are you gatekeeping?
Maybe. Are you?
No, absolutely I'm not. That's the whole thing. I mean, for me, this was something that was so different and so fresh. I mean, I'm a big fan of the Tim Burton Batmans, which I know, Rachel, you're not.
I'm not a fan.
But you're not very keen on Tim Burton.
I'm not very keen on Tim Burton, but I'm not very keen on the fact that his Batman kills people. But I don't know what he was doing with the Penguin, quite frankly. No idea what was happening there. But yeah, he's got Jack Nicholson as the Joker.
We'll come back to Jack Nicholson in a bit. But I mean, for me, like the Joker as a film went somewhere slightly different. This went to sort of those dark places. It was unexpected. I mean, it's a low budget film by Hollywood standards. It cost something like $50 million, and it grossed over $1 billion.
Oh yeah, it made all the money in the entire world. Like, it's the highest earning R-rated film in history, I think, isn't it?
I think so. Which is, I mean, just in terms of sort of cost to profit margin, you can't help but respect it. But I don't even think they expected it to go that way.
But that's why I say this is possibly a pivotal moment for superhero films, because now they know they can make a quote unquote superhero film on a low budget and make stupid amounts of money from it. If you're looking at the laws of diminishing returns, where you're having to invest higher and higher and higher amounts of money in CG fast superhero films, such as all those Avengers films, which apparently cost all the money in the entire world. Yes, they're making back money, but you've got a massive risk there versus the Joker, where you put a relatively low amount of money into the film and then you get a lot of money back. Well, surely anybody in Hollywood with a lick of sense is going to be going, cha-ching, this is now what we do. And you cannot possibly do that with the majority of superheroes without significantly altering what that superhero is. I mean, the Joker probably, to a certain extent, lends itself to that, possibly. And it's a very unexplored origin story anyway.
What does DC stand for?
Detective Comics or something like that.
Yeah, which for me, this feels like it sits better within that sort of detective remit. This is more
of Taxi Driver, this film.
This is brilliant. I mean, but
Taxi Driver exists. And it wasn't very
King
much
of Comedy,
fun
isn't it? This is King of Comedy. It's not Taxi.
It's basically Scorsese does superhero film. It's so clearly what Phillips is going for here.
Mm-hmm. But it's not. It is not a superhero film. There's no superhero in this. I mean, he's
Batman's
not even
there.
a super villain. He's just a regular villain at this point. This is
Batman's in it.
Pardon?
Batman's in it.
Bruce Wayne is in it.
Baby Batman's in it.
Yeah, but he's not Batman then.
No, but all the nods are there.
The Wayne figure in this film is a tit.
That's got some lineage in the comics.
Uh-huh.
In more recent years, decades, I suppose now. There's some lineage of trying to kind of unsanctify the Thomas Wayne legacy. So I mean, I think this film is certainly, it's not deeply familiar with the comic heritage, but it's not unfamiliar with the comic heritage. I mean, I know we don't want to go down this line particularly, because we could absolutely disappear into a rabbit hole here.
Well, no, it's okay. Ben and I will basically be quiet for a couple of minutes, and Rachel, you can tell our listeners about the comic heritage of this, where the comic influences are within this narrative. Okay. Because
Well,
I'm interested to know as well. I don't know the comics particularly well. I only really know Batman from the films and the 1960s TV series, and the TV series actually the little sort of films that they made before that.
Well, I mean, the first thing you kind of need to know about Batman is that the canon is just insane. There's huge amounts of it, and I am going to risk the ire of people who are much more knowledgeable than me if I try to present myself as an expert on this. I went through a great big Batman phase a couple of years back where I read everything I could get my hands on. I barely cracked the surface of Batman canon, but I did read Killing Joke as part of this. It's a fascinating look into. I mean, it's as far as I know, it's the first attempt to engage with an origin story for the Joker, and a lot of what it's trying to do is very similar to what Joker the film is trying to do, in that it's this ordinary guy he's got the ambitions of being a stand-up comic, but then he just has the worst day of his entire life and it drives him crazy, and then later on in the future he tries to show Commissioner Gordon just how easily a good man can be tipped into craziness by significant repeated trauma. So Joker's got a pregnant wife who she and the unborn baby die in a household accident, and he loses his job and falls into a vat of chemicals, of course, and that leads to his complete and utter mental breakdown, which is what obviously is the process going on to a certain extent in Joker. And it is this idea that just by piling on, you risk destroying the core of a person who is essentially basically good, and leaving them with absolutely no investment in humanity whatsoever. So, and I know that is one of the, I mean, it's one of the stated influences in Joker, of course. I think to a very great level, the primary influence on Joker is early 80s Scorsese. I mean, it's so clear. I mean, even the time scale of it being set in 1981, But this is definitely a film that is familiar with Batman lore and Joker lore. I mean, for goodness sake, the Waynes are coming out of Zorro the Gay Blade, when they're struck down in the alleyway.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's the 1981 film that was about Zorro, as opposed to I think it's the Mask of Zorro traditionally, isn't it? That's so bad not to be able to remember that.
Right.
But as I say, Batman canon, Batman lore is huge.
It is vast. It's why we're choosing not to go down too much down the Batman canon route. Ben, as a character, I mean, you sort of already talked about the physicality of Joaquin Phoenix's performance within this.
Yeah.
Which is undeniably. I mean, I was watching it again last night, and the contortions that he twists himself into when he's got his shirt off and stuff, and just watching that body, and the way that he runs, which I mean, I don't know if you noticed, but every time he runs, he looks like he's got great big fat clown shoes
feet
on, even when he doesn't. It's such a nice physical touch. I mean, as an actor, Joaquin Phoenix is just he really has excelled. But I mean, how do you feel about the character generally, and how do you feel about Joker, and how like the Joker, and how do you feel about this Joker, Ben?
Like I've seen obviously the what do you call it? Christian Bale Batman, wasn't that?
Oh, it's Dark Knight.
Dark Knight, yeah. I was like that Joker compared to Joaquin's one. They're kind of similar, but they're not. There's a darkness with both of them, but it comes from a different, like the Joker in the Dark Knight has a lot of mystery sort of behind him, like with the scars, and
they're constantly changing the story as to where that came from.
Yeah, like I thought that was the why so serious thing. Like,
what were you trying to prove? That deep down, everyone's as ugly as you. You're alone. Can't rely on anyone these days. You gotta do everything yourself. Don't we? That's okay. I came prepared. It's a funny world we live in. Speaking of which, you know how I got these scars? No.
Yeah, like that his character, like it didn't seem so like scatterbrained. The Dark Knight Joker, right?
Okay, the Dark Knight Joker wasn't as scatterbrained as the Joaquin Phoenix Joker.
Yeah, as the Joaquin Phoenix.
Heath Ledger, you find more kind of in control.
Yeah, like he's mental, but he's in control. You know what I mean? Like there's a smartness, like a sort of genius behind that Joker. Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, I think, is just like it's just pure scatterbrain madness, and everything that sort of happens around him, like him creating this movement by basically defending himself because he was getting beat on by 3 men, which, fair enough. He was already mental, and he was told that he shouldn't have this gun.
It's a Jesus moment, though, isn't it, as well?
Yeah.
Like him setting up this entire revolution isn't intentional. It's not what he's trying to do at all. He literally goes and acts, and then people start following him.
Yeah,
and there is the shot of him on top of the blazing cars with his arms outspread. The comparisons are I think are there.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the previous cinematic Jokers? So Jack Nicholson and Tim Burton's Batman.
I haven't seen that one.
Ever?
I don't think I've ever seen that Batman.
Oh my gosh.
I've seen Penguin.
I'll break curfew and I'll chuck it round.
The one with Penguin, and I've seen the one with Mr. Freeze.
Right, yeah, you don't need to have seen that one. Or just, yeah.
You know,
What about-
that was that Batman Returns or something like that? Or?
I get Batman Forever and Batman Returns really confused because they're both
You really
kind
can.
of relentlessly terrible films.
Batman Returns is the best of those 4 Batman films.
That's Kilmer, isn't it?
No, it's Michael Keaton.
Batman Returns, sorry, yeah.
Batman Forever and Batman and Robin are the 2 you're thinking of.
Yes, sorry. Mhm.
Ben, I'm not sure if you're aware. Have you ever seen the Adam West Batmans?
The Joker. Have you heard this one? It'll kill you, Batman.
A campy TV series in the 1960s, but they also did a film
Kapow! Shazam!
Yeah, I've seen a couple of them.
version. Okay. You ever see that Joker?
Yeah, he's kind of. I feel like he's more like the comic book kinda.
Depends which comic book era you're talking about.
Yeah, well, obviously I'm talking about like early comic book era.
Yeah.
Like, you know, he's more like that,
Uh-huh.
but he just seems to be like a field clown kind of, you know, jokester. Like he's a jokester, right? You know, the gun with the bang, and then, you know, everything. Well, he doesn't seem to really achieve what he's after. Like, you know, going and stealing a bunch of money and then gets
None
caught
of the
doing
villains
it.
in 60s Batman
Yeah.
ever achieve their aims.
You know what I mean? Like it just seems very lighthearted and, you know, you know, kind of
It's
thing.
pure camp.
Yeah.
It's pure camp. And sort of a campy Batman, you can't have a convincing villain
Yeah.
opposing him.
Yeah.
I think Burton kind of bridges that gap. I mean, when the Burton films are coming out, Batman has just dived into darkness in the comics in the 1980s. And that's sort of starting. I mean, if you hire Tim Burton to direct your Batman film, you're going for a specific type of Batman. You're going for a particular aesthetic. I don't think Burton captured that. I think those are Burton films as opposed to Batman films. But I think at that time, I'm not sure there would have been a director more able to translate the darkness of Batman to a comic book movie, which I mean, again, comic book movies in the sort of late 80s, early 90s, that certainly weren't the industry that they are today.
Yeah.
But with the Burton Batman, I think there is a sense of the Joker changing and evolving, and I think it's sort of the start, certainly in terms of cinema, of the Joker's descent into madness properly. That we're actually sort of, he's no longer he's not just a comic book villain. He's not just someone who sits there and makes crappy jokes.
No, and you get Joker origin story.
Uh-huh.
Really is more so than you get Batman origin story in Batman.
Oh my gosh, I'm so tired of the Batman origin story. I really do not need to see another version of
Yeah,
it. Please
yeah,
just
well-
skip that bit and get to the film.
Well,
Kind of have to agree, yeah.
It's
They
kind of
even
like
stick it in Joker. I mean, it's there.
it's kind of like Spider-Man though as well. It's like, how many Spider-Man origin stories have we had? You know, we don't need to see. We know his uncle dies,
Yeah.
right? We know Batman's parents die. We don't need to see that. We've seen it like 4 or 5 times now already, you know?
But I like the take that the Nolan Batman did on the origin story, where instead of coming out as Zorro, he's coming out of Deflator Mouse.
I haven't
Which-
seen it.
Haven't you?
Haven't seen it either.
No, I realised
I think so.
I missed Batman Begins. I saw Dark Knight, and I think I saw the third one. But I will have to sit down and watch the 3. back
Yeah,
to back.
you do definitely need to see. I mean, that is Batman origin story par excellence. I mean, it really is. It's the most detail I think that really anybody's gone into filmically with Batman's origin story. But it's obviously called Batman Begins. Also, it's got Ra's al Ghul in it. I mean, I do have a sneaking soft spot for Ra's al Ghul. I don't think I have a particular favourite Batman villain. As Joker's too easy a choice. I find him fascinating, and I find the relationship between Joker and Batman fascinating, which is another kind of sort of issue I had with Joker as a film, because that kind of symbiosis, the differential in their ages. I mean, you've got a man in his 40s and you've got a sort of a preteen Bruce Wayne. That completely shifts the power dynamics between the two of them. There should be a symbiosis between. I mean, the whole interrogation of Joker Batman's relationship is about, which one is more damaged. They need each other. They rely on each other. I mean, Lego Batman, for goodness sake, Lego Batman understands this.
Mm-hmm.
Lego Batman made an entire film about how they need each other and how they can't exist without each other. And this film, that's a really troubling power dynamic, because it really hands all the power to Joker.
What about the fact that Joker came out and Suicide Squad came out? As, two Jokers at the same time.
Well, I mean, there was Suicide Squad, and then as Rachel says, Lego Batman was out around about the same time as well. It means we've got 3 slightly different interpretations of Joker within about a year. 2 years.
Yeah. And Lego Batman's not afraid to make Joker really sinister. I mean, there are some shots of Joker in Lego Batman where, the smile, the grin curls back and the teeth are like fangs. He's really terrifying looking. That will haunt your nightmares.
But yeah, we got these 3 very different interpretations, and Jared Leto's Joker, we in a way we've actually seen so little of him, because of the limited screen time he gets in Suicide Squad, according to some people, allegedly because he wasn't very good. And he's not very happy. I wasn't very happy about Joaquin Phoenix getting his own standalone film either.
There's more than one Joker. That's the thing. There is,
yeah.
If you're going to complain about stuff like that, then you really shouldn't be in the unwatchably awful iteration of Joker. I that's the one and only Batman film, well, Batman related film that I couldn't finish. I had to turn it off. It was so bad.
Suicide Squad?
Yeah. I rarely abandon a film before the end of it. I'm a completist like that. I couldn't with Suicide Squad. It was awful.
Well, we could easily debate the merits of every single one of the Batman films.
Yes, we could. Do you want to do that?
I know we'll keep Rachel really, really happy. But I want to talk about the mental health aspects of this film.
I think we really need to talk about the mental health aspects of this film.
This is the thing that seemed to divide audiences quite evenly. I heard people who were so upset by the way that this was depicted, possibly because, as you've sort of already alluded, this is a really, really dark film. I do think it has some redeeming qualities. I think there is a bit of joy in here, but it's pretty bleak. But other people thought that the mental health presentation was actually pretty solid, and I have to say I'm one of them.
Okay, I find that interesting. What mental health illness? What mental illness was he presenting with?
Oh, I think there's several.
I think it was generic Hollywood mental illness.
You think so?
Generic Hollywood boogeyman mental illness. I see. This is the thing. I'm really conflicted about this. I don't think this film has a straightforward answer to whether or not it's damaging or enlightening about mental health. I think a lot of what it's talking about, the expectations of how people with mental health are expected to function in society and expected to become invisible in society and expected to just become good little sort of patients that and that's what Arthur Fleck is initially trying to do, and the discussion about the cuts to social services that create this impossible situation for him, I think is really, really important conversation that needs to be had, increasingly needs to be had. But ultimately this is a film that conflates mental ill health with extreme violence, and that's an incredibly unhelpful stereotype that just, it needs to be addressed, and it needs to be confronted, because statistically people with mental ill health are far, far more likely to be the victim of violence than they are to be the perpetrator of violence.
He was a victim.
Yeah, but it turned him into a mass killer, a conscienceless mass killer.
Well, it did say that he had gotten brain damage from being beaten and abused as a child, and
that's the other thing. I mean,
without his medication as well.
but he refuses to take his medication.
Well, he couldn't get his medication?
He couldn't, but then he stopped taking his medication, and he becomes the boogeyman. He becomes the boogeyman of the violently mentally ill person who will not conform to... And I think that's a really damaging stereotype.
Until a little while ago, it was like nobody ever saw me. Even I didn't know if I really existed.
Arthur, I have some bad news for you.
You don't listen, do you? I don't think you ever really hear me. You just ask the same questions every week. How's your job? Are you having any negative thoughts? All I have are negative thoughts. But you don't listen anyway. I said, for my whole life, I didn't know if I even really existed. But I do. And people are starting to notice.
They've cut our funding. We're closing down our offices next week. The city's cut funding across the board.
I
Social
get
services is part of that.
that why this annoys people, and part of me sat there watching it quite angry to a certain extent that this was the depiction of mental health again. That it's not a positive depiction of mental health at all.
No, nor should it be. I mean, I think if you're going to engage with the realities of what it's like to live with mental ill health, then you need to engage with the fact that it's not sunshine and roses.
But it is also fair to say that there are people out there in the world who are like this.
Yeah.
And so whilst we maybe are taking a minority of people who've got mental illness, what we are doing though is probably there's a huge amount of people who are psychopathic killers, and it's tapping into that. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. What it actually does do though is give us a little bit of appreciation for why he is the way that he is. It gives him a bit of humanity.
Even the majority of people who meet the diagnostic criteria for psychopathy, which is not very well defined anyway, the majority of them are not violent offenders. They're not people that you would want to encounter in your business life because they will absolutely shaft you, but they're not violent offenders.
What was it he says there? The worst part of having a mental illness is people expect you to behave as if you don't.
Yeah. And I mean, I love that sentiment. I love that sentiment, and I love just how alienating it positions mental ill health as being. That's why I say, I mean, this is a film that has got some really good stuff to say, and that's why I find it so conflicting. I just don't think.
Well, there's the question then. How should it have been depicted? If you're going to say that the Joker is a character who is suffering from some kind of mental illness, what do you expect to see on screen from him?
Well, that's the thing, and that's why Gritty, Origin, and Joker are not necessarily cinematically compatible, because ultimately you have to end up by saying that this is the story of a man whose mental ill health led to him becoming a mass killer.
I mean, if we pretended for a second that this wasn't a Batman film, that this wasn't Joker, that this is a criminal. This is Criminal Mastermind number 4.
Well, we've got that film already, effectively, haven't we? We've got Taxi Driver, which is about the story of a man's descent into mental ill health that ultimately manifests in violence. Right,
and but okay, so we've got lots of films that we've had before. We've got more than enough Batman films. We don't need another Batman film by that logic.
Well, no, I'm not arguing that. I suppose it did come across as I was arguing that was a reason to not have it, but the thing, right? So the Joker, as with Batman, come on, Rachel, come on. No, the Joker, as with Batman. I mean, clearly neither of them are healthy people. And the only way for that not to become a commentary, I mean, Batman has Arkham Asylum, and they just chuck everybody into it. Becomes, sort of quote unquote criminally insane people. But because it's so cartoonish, it's not commenting on mental ill health as the precursor to violence. And I really don't think it's a good idea to ignore the fact that this conflation is dangerous to people with mental ill health. It's actively dangerous because it promotes this stereotype of the criminally violent person with mental ill health, when the reverse is true.
Well, I mean, you know yourself from our conversations that we've had as a group, and from the events and stuff that we've done, also within CinePunked, that we've tried to sort of point out repeatedly that having a mental illness, being labelled with a mental illness, doesn't mean you can't function as a normal human being.
Absolutely.
Doesn't mean that you're not part of the world.
Mm-hmm.
But I think
where's that film though? Where is that film about the person who is coping with their mental ill health the way the vast majority of people with mental ill health do? The narrative conflict is absent, so it's not particularly interesting. But any films that try and deal with it, they're dealing with it in this kind of either the tragic sort of oh, look at you, aren't you fragile and delicate, or point and laugh, or be afraid.
But I mean, there has to be something that's cinematic about it. There has to be a story. There has to be dramatic tellings, and ultimately, we want that sort of high drama. I mean, watching this takes me on an emotional roller coaster. You sit there and you feel for him. He is beaten up repeatedly, just for doing his job. He's trying to get by. He is framed by somebody who takes advantage of his mental illness. His work colleague who gives him a gun when he knows he's not supposed to have a gun. He's somebody who's failed by the system. And just when he's trying to engage with it, and you can see him struggling, you can see that there are issues there with it, and then the system just goes, do you know what, we're letting you loose because there's no more money for it. He hasn't got a father. The man that he thinks is his father, possibly because of his own mother's delusions, although I wouldn't be surprised actually if Thomas Wayne was his father.
It's a step too far for me.
Oh, but I mean, this is a narrative that in cinema we've had recently. We talked about this when we did the Austin Powers conversation, talking about Austin Powers and Dr. Evil, but also James Bond and Blofeld, our siblings. This is not an uncommon narrative now within this kind of film.
It's really lazy writing, though.
But
it's Luke, I am your father, basically. And I come at me. Okay, I do like the Star Wars universe. It's not my franchise, but I do like it. But Luke, I am your father, and turns out we're twins. That is really lazy writing.
Yeah.
So you can't even argue against it.
Well, you're gatekeeping Batman from the rest of us.
I'm not intending to gatekeep Batman. That's not the argument I'm making here at all. My argument is that we need. Well,
you said that
films need to do better with this. The very, very best.
I don't think it would be the same Joker if it was handled differently. He wouldn't be the same Joker. Like, normal guy has mental illness, goes about society as normal, without the mental breakdown and lead to violence, and lack of support that he had. Like, if it was handled differently, it wouldn't be the same movie, and it wouldn't be the Joker.
Well, it wouldn't be the Joker if he was handling his urges.
Yeah, so like
Batman wouldn't be Batman if he had dealt with his parents' death in a healthy way.
Yeah, like I don't think the Joker was meant to be some kind of portrayal of mental illness. That people with mental illness can't be normal and don't always have violent tendencies. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Like, the Joker has violent tendencies, and like this is just his origin story, but it has to be handled that way to be the Joker.
Well, I suppose we have a perception of what the Joker is. We think we know what that character is, and increasingly he is a violent sort of psychopath. Mm-hmm. What this film does do is it gives us, as you say, Ben, it gives us the backstory. It helps us to get to where we understand them to be. It may not be a depiction of mental health that is positive, that it's something that we wish to portray on a regular basis. Hashtag not all mental illness. But that doesn't mean that it's not the appropriate way to tell this particular story, that it's not the appropriate backstory for this character to get to this point.
Yeah.
I can see Rachel looking at me with sort of, I'm not completely buying it, Robert.
I see what you're saying.
I don't know how you're supposed to portray mental illness good.
Well, see, that's the whole other question, though, isn't it?
Joker,
the very best depiction of mental ill health I've seen on screen, believe it or not, comes from Scrubs. That deeply fluffy medical comedy.
I hate that show. It's so...
Yeah, it got really silly. I mean, the first series was something very different, but it got really silly. But they had a guest appearance from Michael J. Fox, wasn't it? And he was playing an extremely gifted surgeon with quite severe OCD. And to begin with, it was played a little bit for point and laugh, but he was in on the joke. He was batting back, and he was owning it, and because it hadn't got in the way of his career, it was obviously not. It was a significant mental illness in his life. But then towards the end, in one of the most moving sequences I've seen, Zach Braff's character encounters the surgeon, and he can't stop washing his hands. And he's about to break down, and he just says, I'm stuck here in this loop. I've just washed my hands for the 50th time. I can't stop, and I don't know how long I'm going to be here. And it was such a gut punching moment, and it was played with such sympathy, with such empathy, with such understanding, that I thought, that's how you do it. Now, Scrubs can do this, okay? Scrubs is legitimately one of the stupidest things. It devolved into pure stupidity, but that got it. That got it right. And as somebody who has suffered from OCD for 35 years, that's the depiction that I recognise. The high functioning, the getting on with your life, but also the fact that sometimes it owns you.
I don't want to get into an unpacking of that.
Okay.
That's my temptation, is to start unpicking. There are certain things that we bring it. Oh, fuck! I'm going to do it anyway. Like part of the issue with that, though, is that we know that Michael J. Fox has a degenerative disease.
Yeah.
And part of no matter what he does,
that coincided with his public.
Yeah.
He was in Suits as well.
And he's done a few things, and each of the things that he's done has represented that stuff, but we know that about him, and we can't help but project that onto him. It's the same way if you watch the Christopher Reeve Rear Window and you see him in the wheelchair, this is a man in a wheelchair and this is all very real. That changes how we view these films. If we had an actor on this that we knew was sort of in and out of the pits of despair, that had very public mental health breakdowns, and was then playing the part of Joker, maybe we'd feel about it slightly differently as well, because we'd be saying, that real and that fictional would be kind of coming together.
Yeah. Okay, but then let's throw this out as a question. So why not? Because
why don't we do that?
Because we rightly raised objections to issues of white people being cast in roles that are characters of color. We have issues where the questions are being asked, why are heterosexual actors being given homosexual roles, whereas homosexual actors won't be given heterosexual roles. So why are we not actually asking that people with lived experience of these conditions are being asked to play these roles?
Is there not a risk that it might set them off or something like that? Is that not a risk? No.
Well, people hire Robert Downey Jr. all the time. He's got a well-documented history of addiction issues. So, there's a risk in hiring somebody. Robert Downey Jr. is one of my favorite actors. I would pay to watch him read the phone book. But, you take a risk if you hire, Elizabeth Taylor got pneumonia on the set of Cleopatra, cost them an absolute bloody fortune. You always have a risk. Hire somebody that any ill health will cause an issue.
I think yes, I think that there is a risk of sort of being triggered whenever you're in that kind of part. And I mean, my very, very limited experience, I did a play a few years ago, and the play was about it was centered on an abusive relationship. It was in a subtext. It wasn't immediately obvious that's what was actually going on, but there's an abusive relationship within that. And for me, it just flagged up some stuff that I'd gone through, and some experiences in some darker places. And the further into rehearsals I got, the more difficult that was for me for a while as a performer. And that's me on a very low scale, and I think everyone is slightly different. But yeah, I think it's a valid concern, a valid risk. That doesn't mean though that actors don't do that, because actors are constantly putting themselves. Actors are the ultimate schizophrenics. I mean, they're jumping from role to role on a regular basis. That they're always being somebody different. They're always projecting an image of themselves that is not necessarily who they are. And they're having to sort of go into sort of interesting spaces in their head. I think the reason that we probably don't get those kind of portrayals, or we do, but they're not in the mainstream cinema films. Maybe this is the thing: is that those kind of more sympathetic depictions of mental health might actually be in art house cinema, which the majority of people don't go see art house films. I'm bad enough. I like an art house film, but I don't see enough of them. Most people don't go see them at all. They don't turn up on the television, on the mainstream channels. So people don't get the chance to be exposed to them. So they're not seeing these other depictions. They're not seeing the more positive stuff. And ultimately, it's not going to work in the same way. I think that the criticisms of this film, I think that the criticisms of the depiction of mental health being particularly unpleasant, particularly negative, not particularly it's not a healthy depiction of mental health, or it's not it's certainly not a depiction of a healthy mental person anyway. I think those are fair enough criticisms, but I also don't think that there's any reason why this film shouldn't exist. I don't think that that's enough reason to say that this isn't a good film. This is a good film. This is an amazing performance.
It is an amazing performance. I've seen a couple of people criticize that the performance is having been in some way overdone. I couldn't disagree more. I mean, I think he is possibly one of the most gifted actors working in Hollywood today, and the absolute submersion in that role is just it's evident. I also can't claim that the sort of the visual references to Heath Ledger Joker I can't claim that I didn't enjoy those. I enjoyed those enormously. There were times when I was watching that thinking, this is probably what it would be like to watch Heath Ledger revisit that role 12 years on.
I think there's a lot of parallels. I don't think this film would have existed without the Heath Ledger Joker.
Yeah.
Watching the two back to back yesterday, you could see the parallels. You could see the delicacy of the performances. Before we kind of wrap this up, there's one aspect of this film that we haven't touched on, and us being CinePunked, I think it's something that we have to address. Ben, do you know what I'm going to ask you about?
No.
So there is a sequence within the film. Rachel, I suspect, already knows where I'm going to go with this one.
I don't. I'm fascinated though.
The sequence within the film, just as he sort of becomes the Joker for the first time, and he takes a walk down.
Oh
the
God!
mighty
Right?
steps.
Okay, I know where you're going with this. Yep.
What the dancing and
and
it's specifically the song to which he's dancing, isn't it? And the problematic connotations that song.
Yeah, T-Rex or whatever, isn't it?
It's not T-Rex. No,
not T-Rex. No, unfortunately.
It's Gary Glitter's Rock and Roll Part 2.
Did they not use that for Doctor Who or something?
Well done. They did. There was a #1 single produced by the KLF under the guise of the Time Lords, and I think it was 1987.
You're
Doctor
such a
and the
nerd.
TARDIS. We cater for all nerds in this environment.
Says the woman who's just gone into a long and in-depth talk about Batman canon, but anyway.
Exactly, yeah. I've got it on single and CD and everything.
Of course you do.
But yeah, of course
On
I do.
vinyl?
I've got it on vinyl and I've got it on CD. Mm-hmm.
So what's the issue with that piece of music then? Because it's Gary Glitter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was part. So we've talked about the controversy about the mental health, but the other big controversy about this film was the use of that music within that sequence. And what they later came out and said that the music company, Universal, said that Gary Glitter gets no royalties from this. We own all the rights along with another bunch of other people, so he gets no cash. So there was a newspaper article that sort of suggested he was going to earn a whack a load of money, even though he's a convicted paedophile currently serving at Her Majesty's pleasure. But yeah, so when you know that this music is the music of a convicted paedophile, this is not one of those cases that we've sometimes touched on of an alleged offender. This is a convicted paedophile.
Yeah.
Do you think that's music that they should include within this film? Do you like the music?
We've had this conversation as CinePunked before. Are you somehow not allowed?
Does that
to
mean like
art because of its problematic?
Yeah, it's like everything. Like I don't know, Michael Jackson, right? People don't know whether he
alleged offender.
Alleged, yeah, right.
We're gonna have to be so careful here.
No, we don't. He's dead. You can actually say whatever you want about him.
Really?
Yep. Okay. Libel laws don't apply when you're dead.
Okay.
You know, like I personally, I'm not a big fan of Michael Jackson's music, but that's just my taste. I never have, regardless whether he may or may not have partaken in playing with children.
It's very delicately done, Ben.
Yeah.
I'm recording this video, so I just got to put Rachel on screen there as she laughs herself to death.
Right. Or take Lost Prophets, singer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He is a pedo. Yeah, he's a pedo, and he's locked up and doing whatever. There are other people in that band that you know, like, they didn't know what was going on. Well, I don't know if they did or not. Who knows? Like, who really knows? But
they didn't. They were shocked by all that stuff. And yeah, you're quite right. They make no money now because that guy fucked up their whole stick. Like, you know, there are other members, other people. Like, yeah, fair enough. Your man was the singer of the band, right? You know, Lost Prophets or whatever. Does that mean? Personally, I don't like the Lost Prophets music, right? So you know, it's just I'm playing devil's advocate here. Like, does that mean that you shouldn't listen to that music at all? You know what I mean? Like, is that fair on the other guys in that band who created that music, and this guy just happens to be singing over the top of it? Is that fair for the other guys? You know, it depends. I suppose it depends on what creative way the song is split as well. You know, whenever they're taking their money, and you know, like there are other people involved. Like, I'm just playing devil's advocate. Like, is it okay to, like, to be honest, when that scene came on, all I was thinking was Doctor Who, Doctor Who. You know, whenever because I heard that song whenever he was dancing down the stairs. I had no idea that was Gary Glitter. Rachel, just want to. I mean, if anyone hasn't listened to this before, we did have a long conversation about this. It's up as our Art versus Artist podcast, and we did delve into some of these areas. And the conclusion of that was very split and very. I don't think we had a definite conclusion.
I don't think it's possible to have a definite conclusion on this. That art exists. The art created by any problematic creator exists and continues to exist. Now, what are we going to do? Destroy all the art because we don't want to allow the art to proliferate from a problematic creator? I mean, that's censorship, and it's almost thought policing. So, yeah, it's not. I would choose not to support artists that have engaged in behaviour that I find abhorrent, just as a general rule. We've had this conversation, as you say, we did our art versus artist conversation, and yeah, I don't think that was able to come to any definite, and I don't think it can come to any kind of definite conclusion, because really it has to be an individual choice, and I think the majority of people are uncomfortable with art that has problematic associations, but what one does with that discomfort has to be a personal decision. Everybody has the right to make art. Everybody in the world, regardless of what activity they may or may not engage in, and what damage they may do, everybody has the right to art. They don't have the right to a multi-million platform. You know,
I suppose
that's the difference. But this art exists, and it is iconic. And what can you do? I mean, it's a film that is rightly or wrongly trying to ask difficult questions anyway, and it is trying to provoke. And
the argument is that you could just not include it. You could choose another piece of music for the film. I mean, this is what other people will say to you, that you know, that was the option that they could have gone with.
Of course it was. That
might have been better for them. I mean, to express an opinion of my own on this one, see, and I suppose also in deference to those people who have a problem with it, is that they don't necessarily know when you watch this film for the first time that music is in there.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's something that you find deeply offensive, the fact that that's there can be a problem for you as you watch it. But you know, as you say, it is provoking. This film is not a film that's sitting there, you know, making things easy for us.
No, it is a film that starts off by trying to drill into your head and just gets progressively harder drill. You know, it's a film that wants you to react, and it wants you to react angrily. And it doesn't mind what direction that anger takes.
I think part of this as well is that this particular track, you know, I mean, 1981 when this film set, this is a track that was still doing the rounds. It's a song that still gets played occasionally at American stadium events for sports, because it's been in their canon of stuff for a long time. They're more aware now than they used to be of the scandal around Glitter. Because obviously he was a British act, they didn't care. You know, he wasn't big in the States, but that track was a track that had become an anthem. But for me, it sort of works really, really well. Apart from I actually quite like some of the music of Gary Glitter and the Glitter Band, which is a terrible thing to admit, but like
it's not though.
It works.
It's not a terrible thing.
It is a terrible thing to admit.
You can. I think it's a terrible thing to support the actions that man has taken. But
I downloaded all his stuff without paying for it. You know.
Okay, don't admit to that live on whatever. You can't legislate for people's taste. I mean, that's an appalling level of control to attempt to exercise, and that exercise of control has to be undertaken by the state, and that's an appalling overreach. And I say that as somebody who's quite far left in my political opinions, and I'm quite happy to have a lot of things legislated for me, but. You know, it's not a terrible thing to admit that you quite enjoy the music of somebody who, you know, it's not a terrible thing to admit that you quite enjoy the films of a problematic filmmaker.
What about?
It's a good thing to interrogate that enjoyment, but
Ben?
Sorry, Ben.
Yeah, just going on sort of similar vein, like you could do the same thing with like clothing companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Clothing companies which you know do not make their clothes the way they should, right? But people still buy the clothes. You know what I mean? Like knowing that certain companies would use, I don't know, you know, shirt factories or whatever in China with a bunch of children hand sewing things, you know, or India or whatever it is. Like, but people still buy them.
Yeah.
You know, they have a choice. Like, it's sort of the same thing. You know, artist does bad thing, but artist has made good stuff. you're torn. You're between a hard and rock place. Are you a bad person because you like the music, just because this
Of what they've
person
done.
has done something terrible? You know, I don't get it personally. I can sort of, I don't know. I'm probably pretty cold and detached that way. Like none of that stuff really.
You mean you like Joker?
Yeah,
Detach yourself from it.
I can just detach myself from it. Like I don't get bogged down by it. You know, I don't let it. Like there's too much other shit to worry about, rather than that. You know. But yeah, you know, are you a bad person for
Yes.
for
No.
liking that music? Like I don't see the problem, but I'm cold. So
No, I mean, look, it's something we have discussed on the show before, and it's something I think that probably will have to discuss again at some point. I mean, one of these days we're going to end up looking at one of those problematic films, and just have to deal with it,
yeah,
because that's the job. That's what you have to do. You cannot sit there on an island and say, I'm never going to look at this stuff.
No,
Yeah.
as a film theorist, if you're going to have any kind of serious engagement with a history of mainstream film, you have to engage with the likes of Birth of a Nation. You can find it abhorrent, and you probably should find it abhorrent. And if you don't find it abhorrent, then I question some stuff about you. But you have to engage with it. You can't.
We will save that one for our Birth of a Nation podcast.
Can we not do a Birth of a Nation podcast, please? It's
No, we're going to.
It's like 12 days long, that film.
We're going to do it, and you know, you're just going to have to engage with it.
Why do you hate my happiness, Robert?
I've just watched Joker. I mean, like, I am not in a happy place. I feel that this is what we have to do. We have to address the problems with society and
Have
recognize what
to.
the problem is.
Have to. Is that you?
Yes, we do. We do. Look, so in summing up, Joker is. We're not happy. I suppose two questions. One, is it a good film?
yes.
And the second one are the problems with is the mental health depiction within this film too much of a problem for you to get past?
No. I
man.
answered them both. There.
Rachel?
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think there's any kind of subjective or objective rationale that could call this other than an exceptional film.
Okay. And you can get past the mental health
Do
depiction.
I have to like it? Absolutely not. I don't have to like it. I like bits of it. There are bits of it that are never going to sit well with me. I definitely have some issues with the depiction of mental health. Does that detract from the fact that it's an exceptional piece of filmmaking? I in all honesty, I have to say no, it doesn't.
There we go.
Probably not going to watch it again. Like,
I probably will. I bought it, so.
I feel like my eyes were bleeding by the end of it.
She's so harsh. And yet she'll watch The Room.
Yeah.
Endlessly. For me, I thought it was an amazing piece of filmmaking. I came out of that film feeling affected. And watching it again, you know, it still is very, very powerful. Yes, it's not necessarily a depiction of mental health that I want to see. As somebody who has mental health issues, I don't feel I'm there, although I feel that bits of me are in that. So it's sort of an uncomfortable understanding, and I suppose there's always that, for me, there's an acknowledgement that actually if certain circumstances went a different way for me, maybe I would be like him. Maybe I would do those things. I don't know.
I hope not.
Well, so do I. But is that not the whole point? Is that we hope not? I mean, thankfully, I am not at a stage where I need to be, where I was abused like that as a child, and where I need medication in order to function.
Yeah.
But that is his particular narrative within that film, and that's a whole other dissection. If you haven't seen it, I recommend going and checking it out. It is definitely one of the standout films of 2019, and is a very different film for anyone who, like me, who's a little bit wary when it comes to superhero movies. This is great because people think it's a superhero movie, and it's not at all. There's no superheroes in it. There's not even a supervillain. Just a psychopath. Yeah. Okay, folks. Thank you as ever to my colleagues, Ben.
Thank you.
Great, and Rachel.
Thank you.
I thank me as well. I
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you. Yeah, it's nice to be acknowledged once in a while. So yeah, you will find us, if you haven't already, you find us on social media. We're all over the place. It's CinePunked and on Facebook, and we're on Twitter, and you'll find us on Instagram at CinePunked Film. Our website is www.cinepunked.com. If you like the podcasts, go and listen to some more, subscribe, and if you're on one of those podcast app things that allows you to leave reviews, please leave us reviews. We do like feedback, and it helps to inform what we do, and we love hearing from you. And if you've got any comments on this show, if you just contact us on one of our social media platforms, slide into our DMs if you must, and we will chat again soon. Until the next time, adios.
Goodbye.